So after a disappointing 5-5 start to the season, the chances of reaching the Super Bowl and even making the playoffs, especially after Brock Purdy being ruled out for this game against Green Bay, what direction should we be thinking the Niners will go this offseason? Should Kyle be out? And if so, what does this mean for Brock? Who might the potential replacements for Kyle be? What type of coach are we looking for? And my surprising end to the Kyle Shanahan era in San Francisco. All that next.
Yo, it's time to grind. With Brian on the mic, content is one of a kind. Now, welcome to my show, the BS Report, where we let the truth flow. We're breaking down the stories, shining light on the games. No fake news here, just hot takes blowing flames. The BS Report, yeah, we're keeping it tight. Bringing you the news, making it ignite. Tune in, turn it up, feel the heat rise. With Brian in the house, our takes won't be compromised. From the latest news to the hottest debates, in the BS Report, we're setting the stakes. So come along, join the ride, where Brian and his subscribers are full of Niner pride. Yo.
What is up, everybody? This is the BS Report, and I am your host, Brian Salcido. Let's get to it. Now, guys, look, I've been on the fire Kyle Shanahan train since the Super Bowl. The way that game ended, the way that he did what Kyle does, it was just enough for me. At that moment, I was ready to just pack his bags and drive him to the airport myself. And I've basically been on that train ever since then. And as this season has progressed, it's only gotten stronger in me. But then I was listening to Jesse the last couple of days with Last Second Sports. And, you know, I thought, maybe I'm not being objective about this. Maybe I'm not really thinking it through. Maybe I'm not really putting as much thought into it, and I'm reacting emotionally. So I decided to think about what are the reasons that I really feel like I'm ready to move on from Shanahan. Is it just because he's snarky and, you know, kind of a asshole in his press conferences? Is it the fact that, you know, he has this better than everybody attitude about him? Or is there really legitimate reasons why I feel this way? You know, so I thought about it a little bit, and, you know, I've listened to all the content creators, from Grant Cohn to Jesse to Stats, Larry Krueger, the coach, Ryan G. Hensley, all of these guys. Nothing but respect for all these guys. I think they're great. You know, I get pumped every day to watch their content. And to be honest with you, those guys have given me an outlet to vent my frustrations, to be able to get them out after a game. I watch their post-game reaction shows, and, you know, I'm able to listen to what they have to say, and it's like most of the time, you know, I go to Grant because that dude just gonna make me laugh. That guy's hilarious. And then I'll turn over to Jesse for a little bit of reason, you know. And I used to listen to Rob because I kind of used to think that he was right in the middle. And lately, you know, I've gone back and forth with him through the chat a little bit, and man, I just don't understand. He told his audience, you know, a week ago that, or a few days ago, that Kyle deserves one season where he misses the playoffs. Has he not built up enough equity, basically, based on, you know, 4 NFC championship runs and 2 Super Bowls to buy him a season of missing the playoffs? And my thinking is, dude missed the playoffs half the time he's been the coach here. You know, I get it, the first 2 years he was building the program up, but, you know, most coaches get 3 years. And in his third year, yeah, he reached the Super Bowl. and that gave him equity. That gave him, you know, equity to go through the season that he went through after the playoffs. You know, there was a lot of injuries that year, but at the same time, you know, my question is, when does the equity run out? Has it already run out, or is it just so much equity that, you know, the shortcomings that we've seen are excusable? And the way I look at it is the standard for the 49ers is Super Bowl. You know, I'm old enough to have seen the 49ers, you know, in part of their glory days. The standard for me is not reaching an NFC championship game. That is not the standard. So for me, you don't get equity for that. That's what's expected of you. You don't build equity by doing what you're expected to do. You build equity by exceeding those expectations. If you start to fall below those expectations, that's when you start to eliminate some of that equity. That's when you start to spend it. So reaching the NFC championship game, to me, that falls a little bit short of my expectation as a 49ers fan. My expectation, once you got a Super Bowl caliber roster, is to reach the Super Bowl and win it, not reach the NFC championship game. You know, when you sit there and tell me year after year after year we have the best roster in the NFL, then my expectation, and you, Kyle, view yourself as the greatest coach in the NFL, then my expectation for you is to win the damn Super Bowl. Not reach it, not fall short one game of it, win it. So I'm not giving you equity for reaching the NFC Championship and losing it twice. I will lower my standards a little bit and give you a little bit of equity for reaching the Super Bowl. But here's the thing. So 2019, you reach a Super Bowl, and I'll give you equity for that. Fine. But my thing is I look at all the failures, all of the shortcomings of Kyle Shanahan over the years, from refusing to scout Patrick Mahomes, for saying that you love Josh Allen so much and that's your prototypical quarterback. That's the dude you want, but yet not being aggressive to go get him. Now, I may be wrong. Maybe I don't know. Maybe he did. I don't know. But the most egregious thing to me is you didn't even scout Pat Mahomes. And then Tom Brady comes knocking. And your thing is that you would rather stick with Jimmy G? You know, those two decisions eat into your equity. You know, the Pat Mahomes thing was before the Super Bowl. So, in my opinion, you started to go in the negative before you even gained any equity. So the equity that you got from winning or from reaching the Super Bowl in 2019 wasn't as high as it could have been, because refusing to scout that particular quarterback, it may be in hindsight, but that's egregious. That's unacceptable. You get paid millions of dollars and you hired the scouting staff. You are in charge of all of that. You get paid to make sure that you get that right, and you got it wrong. So that digs in or takes away from the equity you would have gained in 2019. The decision you made in 2020 with Tom Brady, that eliminates so much of that equity. Now, trading 3 first-round picks and a third to move up to draft Trey Lance, who I will admit, I was stoked, man. I was so excited. I got up and basically jumped for joy when we drafted him. But making that trade and then handling him the way that you did, basically giving up on him 5 minutes after you made the pick, that is so far beyond egregious. In my opinion, that in and of itself is a fireable offense. You ruined dude's career. Basically, that's that is not okay. For you to be just so nonchalant with those 3 first round draft picks, and we're paying for it now. We are. I heard people saying that we're not we're not suffering from the loss of those 3 picks. We're suffering from the other first round picks that we missed on. Yeah, well, we're still suffering from those 3 first round picks. You think if we would have had those 3 first round picks, those 3 first round talents on this roster, we wouldn't be in a better position today than at 5-5? For a fact, we would be. Then, you put that aside, and then let's talk about the other misses that you've had, specifically in the first round. You've hit on Bosa, which you get no credit for. I'm sorry, I give you 0 credit for hitting on Bosa. I could have made that pick. My wife, who doesn't even care one lick about football, would have looked at a prospect rating page and made that pick. You get 0 credit for that. I'll give you some credit for Ayuk. You traded back up. You got the dude you wanted. He turned out to be a great, I don't know if I'll say great. He turned out to be a very good receiver. And so I'll give you credit for that. The jury's out on Ricky, but what else have you done in all your drafts? You get credit for 1 first-round pick. You got Debo in the second round. Okay. That was great for what? A season? Debo has had one good season. And I would say part of the reason why Debo has fallen off the way he has is because that's your buddy. How about you be a coach? How about you drive him? How about you put a little bit of fire under his butt and get him every other season he's coming in out of shape. And you don't get a lot of equity for hitting on that pick. He's a second-round pick. You're supposed to hit on him. What does missing on almost every single third-round draft pick that you had, what does that do to the equity that you gained from the 2019 Super Bowl? There's so many. I'm not going to give you credit for the late round draft picks, because from what I can see, you didn't develop them. Because I've watched the training camp videos. Now, I haven't myself been to training camp, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be the expert. But I've watched the coverage of training camp. I've watched the videos that they show. I've seen you during games, and I can only assume that the persona you have during games and also during training camp would be the same persona that you have during practice. And that is that you are buried in your play sheet and that you're kind of just watching. So I give the position coach and the coordinators the credit for the development of those late round draft picks. And I have a sneaking suspicion that those are also the people, because they scouted them, they put the hours in, they put the time in, that made the suggestions to you. Now, if you want some credit on that, I will give you credit for giving them the okay to draft them. But do you really get a lot of equity for that? I don't think so. Now, let's talk about you as a head coach. You're not one. Kyle is not a head coach. Kyle Shanahan is an offensive coach. He's an offensive coordinator with the title of head coach. Because you know what? If he was the head coach, then he wouldn't be stuck with his face in his play sheet when the team is spiraling in the middle of a game. He has no feel for what's going on in the game. He has no feel for what's going on the defense side of the ball. He looks up just long enough to get pissed off when somebody makes a mistake. And instead of walking over to a player and encouraging them so maybe that it doesn't keep spiraling out of control, he shakes his head, says a couple swear words, and then buries his face right back in his play sheet again. That is not a head coach. So for me, that's another check against you. Because when I look at it, and I look at the glory days of this team under your regime, and I look at the personality, the hype, the buildup that goes through a game. You know who this team on the field took the personality of? Your defensive coordinators, D'Amico Ryans and Robert Saleh. That's who this team modeled themselves after on the field. Not after you, Kyle. They modeled themselves after the guys that actually coached them, the guys that actually talked to them after a play was done or after a series was done. Those are the guys that the players modeled their personality after. Now, off the field, a lot of these guys have Kyle's personality, which is also lends credence to the fact that he's not a great head coach because he has instilled an attitude of entitlement in his players, like they have arrived. Excuse me. That's not the right attitude that you instill in a team that hasn't accomplished the main goal. You know, they interviewed Kobe at a press conference during the final, and I think he was up 3-0 or 3-1, I don't remember, and they asked him, "Are you happy?" And he's like, "Why? The job's not done. What is there to be happy about?" That's a leader. That is a mindset of a champion. That's a winning mindset. A winning mindset isn't, we're the best team. No, you're not. You might have the most talent, but you're not the best team. You're not the best coach. You don't play together the best. Because if you were and you did, you would have the 6th Super Bowl, maybe 7, maybe 8. Who knows how many you'd have? But Kyle can't get out of his own way. So far, I've given him equity for 2019. And I've taken equity away for Pat Mahomes handling, for the Tom Brady thing, for the huge Trey Lance debacle. We've taken away equity for his demeanor as a head coach and his ability to reach his players during a game, his ability to pull his team out of a tailspin, which he has not been able to do. Now, granted, in years prior, he hasn't had to because they were front runners. But this year, when he actually needed to step up and be a coach, he failed. He's continuing to fail. So far, I've got a lot more negatives than I've got positives. Now, let's talk about the NFC Championship game. Well, as I previously stated, you're not getting equity from me for reaching them and losing. I'm sorry, you're not. That is not the standard. Reaching an NFC Championship game is not the standard. Losing in an NFC Championship game falls below the expectation. How could you get equity for falling short of your goal, for falling short of what's expected of you? You don't get equity for that. I'm sorry. So for me, if anything, you lost a little bit. You got close, so I won't dock you too much, but you lost. Now, the last Super Bowl, I'm not giving you equity for that one. You're not getting any equity from me for even reaching that Super Bowl. You want to know why? Because I'm going to dock equity from you for blowing a 10-point lead. I'm not going to dock equity for blowing the 10-point lead in the first Super Bowl. Because you know what? You go through stuff like that and you're supposed to learn. That's supposed to make you better. Well, Kyle hasn't made you better because you keep continuing to make the same mistakes over and over again. So you reach the NFC Championship game against the Rams, and you blow a lead again, blow a fourth quarter lead again, and you do it in the same fashion that you did it in the damn Super Bowl in 2019, because you get a lead in the Super Bowl or the NFC Championship game or any big game for that matter, and you decide not to do what got you there and run the ball. You decide you're going to pass the ball. What the hell? You have millions of fans out there screaming at you, what the freak are you doing? And you do it anyways. And you're going to tell me that millions of 49er fans around the world are smarter than you? Because I'm pretty sure that, let's say you in the fourth quarter against the Rams or against the Chiefs the first time or even the last time, for whatever reason couldn't come back out to start, the second half or even in the fourth quarter, and you had to turn the play calling over to somebody else, we probably win those Super Bowls, because I'm certain that D'Amico or Robert or Steve Wilkes would have been like, run the ball. We would have never had to put the game in Jimmy's hands. Yeah, he missed the pass. He blew it. He had the chance to be the hero. And I'll never be able to let that go when it comes to him. But he should have never been in that position. You can blame Jaquiski Tartt for missing the interception. He should have never had to be in the position to seal the game with that interception. You can blame Steve Wilkes for the Super Bowl last year. Give me a break. Give me a break. The fact that you did not know, and I don't care what anybody says, you did not know the overtime rules. Man, that is a fireable offense. In the fourth quarter of a Super Bowl, going into overtime, you did not know the rules? Oh my man. What are we doing here? What are we doing? What is it going to take for Kyle to learn? How many Super Bowls does he got to lose? How many big games does he got to lose? The NFC Championship game against the Eagles, everybody wants to give him a pass on that one. And I will slightly do it. I will slightly give him a pass. But at the same time, that season, Hassan Reddick was one of the top pass rushers in the NFL. And you're blocking him with your third string tight end? Bro. No. No equity for that. You'll get a little bit of equity for reaching the NFC Championship game with your third string quarterback, but I don't know that was anything you did. That was luck. That was luck. How can you, to get back on this negative equity stuff, how can you blow so many assets on a quarterback and then treat him the way you did in Trey Lance to even be able to get to Brock Purdy that season? That is just egregious negligence. That's crazy. That is insane. You got hired by the Yorks, and they basically told you, Kyle, you get control. This is you, and we're going to let you spend $1 billion. Excuse me. That's not hyperbole. That's not hyperbole. Look up all the contracts that Kyle has signed or given out since he's arrived here. It's $1 billion. He spent money on contract after contract after contract, even to the detriment of this team. This season alone, this offseason alone, how is he getting equity? How does he have any left? He signed Christian or restructured Christian McCaffrey, basically gave him an extension, knowing he was hurt. Knowing he was hurt. He gave $30 million a year to Brandon Ayuk, knowing that he was never going to use him as a number one receiver. He guaranteed more money for Trent Williams, knowing that he probably was going to be going downhill. He restructured Deebo Samuel, seeing with his own eyes that Deebo was not the Deebo of old. He has hamstrung this organization with his decisions year after year after year. And then the Yorks allow him to keep kicking the can down the road so that even if we do move on from him, we're set up to be not very successful for the next few years. So, with that being said, how has Kyle not used up his equity? Because the way I see it, I'm going to give him equity for the first Super Bowl. I might give him a little bit of equity for reaching the NFC Championship game with Brock Purdy, but I feel like that's more luck than anything. You know, in my opinion, Brock Purdy saved Kyle's job up to this point. So how has he got so much equity that everybody keeps talking about? He deserves this, he deserves that. What does he deserve? How? That's what I want to know. Because in my opinion, his negatives way outweigh the positives. Because even look at his offense prior to CMC and Purdy taking over. It was never great. The Niners were winning the way they were winning because of Robert Saleh and DeMeco Ryans, not because of Kyle. Not because Kyle had this juggernaut offense. It was okay. Yeah, we could run the hell of the ball until it mattered. Once it mattered, Kyle got in his own way and stopped doing it. So how is he getting equity for being this great offensive mind? I'm more willing, I guess, to give him a little bit of equity for having the courage and intelligence to trade for Christian McCaffrey. And for listening to him when they told him to draft Brock Purdy. I'm going to give him equity for anything. That's what it's going to be for. It's certainly not going to be for his offense. Look at what his offense is again. Without Brock Purdy, without Christian McCaffrey. I mean, come on. I just don't see how we can possibly sit here and say that Kyle's done all these great things. You know, he did turn around a franchise that was an embarrassment to the San Francisco 49er brand. Those Jim Tom Sula, Chip Kelly days, and the days prior to those were an embarrassment of the San Francisco 49er brand. So I will give him credit for turning it around. And I appreciate it. And I will sincerely tell Kyle, thank you for that. Thank you for that. But I think Kyle also is the beneficiary of his own dumb luck in that regard as well. You know, maybe I should give him some equity for having a good eye for coaching talent. Because, you know, he did hire Saleh and he did hire DeMeco and he has hired his position coaches. So, you know, maybe I should give him a little equity for that. Truthfully. But I don't know that it's enough to even out all the shortcomings. I don't, because I put the success that we've had at least as much on his defensive coordinators and his defensive position coaches than I do on him specifically. Show me the proof that Kyle developed anybody. Because you know what? I watched these film breakdowns from guys like Chase Daniel, JT O'Sullivan, these dudes, and you know what? Kyle doesn't view the game through the lens of a head coach or a quarterback. It's like his play design are and his offensive play calling and his ideas are through the lens of a wide receiver because that's what he played. You know, I never picked up on that. And then I seen them point that out, and now it's clear as day. I can't unsee it. So here's the thing, like, I think Kyle's done some good things. Don't get me wrong. But miss me with this whole thing about Kyle has built up so much because he's reached 4 NFC championships and 2 Super Bowls. No. Mm-mm. The standard is winning the Super Bowl. This is the San Francisco 49ers. This is not the Seattle Seahawks. This is not the Arizona Cardinals. This is not even the Dallas Cowboys. This is the San Francisco 49ers. Our standard is to win the Super Bowl. You're not getting credit for losing an NFC championship game. I'm sorry, you're not. I'll give you credit for turning the team around and getting them as far as you can get them. You know, and I'm talking to Kyle like he's actually going to see this, and he probably won't. But I wish he would, and he wouldn't give a shit if he did. But man, I just wish that Jed would have the stones to sit Kyle down and be like, bro, this is not okay. And so plenty of people have said, a lot of people, at least in the content creation world, have said that maybe Kyle deserves one more year. No. So he can set us back farther? So he can get Brock $60 million over 5 years? So he can keep kicking the can down the road on a bunch more players? Maybe he, signs some players and gets to another Super Bowl and then decides to blow another 10-point lead. Because that's almost certainly what's going to happen. Because if Kyle has shown us anything, it's that he doesn't learn from his mistakes. He doesn't evolve. He is not self-aware. And the dude must not own a mirror because he sure as hell doesn't know who he is. Because if he did, most self-respecting people who would want to build a legacy from themselves would change their shortcomings and turn them into strengths. That is not Kyle. And I don't know, at least not with the 49ers, that it ever will be Kyle. I think the dude needs to be humbled. But I don't see that happening as a member of the 49ers. I don't see Jed York having the courage to pull the power away from him. And that's sad. Mommy needs to take the team back. Because as much as Kyle is failing, if Jed continues to let this go on, then so is he. And so I don't believe that Kyle should get another year. He used up his equity. It's gone. It's gone. This year was his opportunity with all the injuries, with everything that's gone on. This was his opportunity to show that he was a coach worth moving forward with. Because there's coaches, even with all of our injuries, there's coaches out there that are still winning games with less than we have with our injuries. Look at Arizona. Look at Denver. Look at the Chargers. I would say, yeah, they got Mahomes, but look at the Chiefs. They're not as talented as the 49ers. They're not. They got, on defense, they got some dogs in them, and they got great coaching. See, but that's what they have, great coaching. Patrick Mahomes isn't playing like an MVP. Patrick Mahomes isn't carrying that team. You know who's carrying that team? Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo. That's who's carrying that team. Look at Buffalo. You're going to tell me Buffalo has as much talent on it right now as the 49ers do? Not even close. Yeah, Josh Allen's great, but they're coached well. And so Kyle has not been able to achieve what should have been his goal this season once it started to get off the rails. And that was to prove that he is still worth keeping here. He still deserves to be the coach of the 49ers. But Kyle's only great. Kyle's never great. Kyle's only good when his team is loaded with better talent than the rest of the league. As soon as his talent levels out, or even slightly above level, he's not any good. You can use the argument, well, receivers aren't getting separation. I thought Kyle was some sort of offensive genius. To me, an offensive genius can take lesser talent in the wide receiver room and scheme them open. So Kyle picked the defensive coordinator. If you want to sit there and say, well, the defensive coordinator is not doing his job, the special teams coordinator is not doing their job, Kyle picked them. Kyle hired them. It's Kyle's philosophy how we play defense. It's Kyle's philosophy how we approach special teams. So if you're going to blame the coaching, and you're going to blame the schemes, and you're going to blame the way that those units produce, then you've got to blame Kyle. Because one, he picked them, and two, he refuses to get involved with them. So explain to me where Kyle has all this equity coming from. And how much equity do you get? Because there's nothing anybody is ever going to tell me that's ever going to make me believe that Kyle should get any equity for reaching an NFC Championship game. So the Rams and the Eagles, those games are gone. So he's reached 2 Super Bowls. He should have won them both, and he blew them both. So I really want someone to tell me, how much positive equity do you get for that? That it completely cancels out all the horrible decisions and egregious failures that Kyle has had in his tenure here. Up to and including his just ridiculous way that he extends contracts and kicks a can down the road. The way that he handles the offensive line, the way that he approaches the draft, apparently, because he's missed on so many picks, early, critical, important picks. His handling of the quarterback position, he made Jimmy Garoppolo the highest paid player in the NFL after 5 games. 7. I'll give you 7 if you want to count the 2 in New England. I mean, the dude is so careless. And I don't understand. And I tried because, like I said, I respect the hell out of Jesse Naylor. And, I mean, I listened to what he said, and he made me think. He made me stop and be like, okay, I'm being emotional. And so I was like, you know what? I need to look at this. And I need to write it out, and I need to really look at why I feel the way I feel. And after doing that, I feel stronger in my stance than I did before. And that's not to say that Jesse's wrong. We just have different opinions. You know, we obviously weigh things differently, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. In my opinion, I don't see it. I don't see it at all. I don't want Kyle to have another year to make more mistakes. If they're going to give Kyle another year, they better tell him you don't get to make any decision. That's not going to work. We still have to draft players. We still have to sign people because we're losing like half our roster is free agent. We have a decision to make on Brock. We really want Kyle making that decision to hamstring our organization for the next 5 years or longer? Man, I personally don't want to wait till 2029 to sniff a Super Bowl again. So why give him another year if we already know what he is? We already know what he is. There's nothing he can do to change that. So, you know, with that being said, and me thinking it's time to move on from Kyle, what does that mean for Brock? Now, here's the thing, guys. I love Brock. Brock's a great dude. He's a very good quarterback. He is. I live in Arizona. I've lived in Arizona the majority of my life. You know, I want to root for Brock so bad. I want him to succeed and be our franchise quarterback so bad. Especially because, and I know, you know, some people might not care about this, and it may not mean anything when it comes to football, but I have a strong belief in God. And I consider myself a very, very faithful follower of the Lord. And to see somebody stand on that foundation so strongly and proudly is awesome to me. And so for me to watch somebody with such high character succeed, and then for him to be right in my backyard, that is so cool. But as long as Kyle's his coach, there's nothing Brock can do to prove that he's worth the money. He is not capable of proving that he is a $60 million franchise quarterback, because Brock is never going to have the freedom and the ability to show that under Kyle Shanahan, because Kyle's always going to have his thumb on him. It's never going to happen. Brock needs to be able to take the team and show that it's his team. It's Kyle's team. Always has been and always will be as long as he's here. Which is the reason why Tom Brady was not brought in. So, you know, when the offense is fluttering and it's like we're running in quicksand and we just can't get nothing going, we're in a funk, you know, why can't Kyle turn the reins over to Brock and be like, all right, Brock, let's run some tempo here. Let's run up tempo, call the plays at the line. Whatever you see out there, the playbook inside and out. Brock knows that playbook probably as good as Kyle does. So it's like, you know what, Brock, let's get it going here. We're not going to let the defense substitute. We're not going to substitute. We're just going to run with some tempo here. We're going to get a rhythm going. We're going to get our blood flowing, and let's get it going. And let Brock be a leader. Let Brock show what he can do. Maybe he can't, but we don't know. And as long as Kyle's here, we never will. You say give Kyle one more year and Brock one more year to prove himself. Brock can't. He can't. Giving Brock 2 plays in the huddle and telling him that he can choose between the 2 is not giving Brock audibles. It's giving Brock 2 plays. That's not an audible. Not in the spirit of the term. It's not. I guess if you want to get technical, it is. But when people say that Brock's not allowed to call audibles, and people want to argue that he is because he did stupid, they are not arguing in the spirit of what we're trying to get across. Brock is not audible. So, Brock doesn't have Kyle wants to say, well, not many quarterbacks get the freedom. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. Saying there's not many quarterbacks is not saying that there's no quarterbacks. And I guarantee you that the franchise quarterbacks that are in the NFL get to audible. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, those guys, Justin Herbert, shit, I bet you CJ Stroud, they audible. Now, if you want to tell me guys like Bo Nix, and you want to tell me guys like Will Levis and Bryce Young, if you want to tell me those guys don't get to, call audibles, and then fine. But you're telling us that Brock Purdy's the real deal. You're telling us that Brock Purdy's a franchise quarterback. You're telling us that Brock Purdy's going to set the market for quarterbacks and pay. Well, if that's the case, then let him be that guy. Show us. Because right now, you have a fan base divided because you say one thing, and half the fan base believes that what you say is gold, and the other half the fan base doesn't trust a damn word that comes out of your mouth, but you show us something else. And that's why the half of us that don't believe a word out of your mouth feel the way we do. Because you say something, but you show us something different. So there's no trust built between half the fan base and Kyle. Now, the other half the fan base that thinks Kyle walks on water, they're nothing. Fine. Fine. I'm not in the habit of following blindly. So, I tell my kids all the time, it's not important in life what people tell you. What you want to pay attention is to what they show you. And that's how I live my life. That's who I decide who I'm going to trust. I don't care what somebody tells me. What are they showing me? And so Kyle could tell me all he wants that Brock is a franchise $60 million quarterback. But Kyle's not showing me that he is because he doesn't even trust him. Now, none of this is a knock on Brock. Brock is so smart. He's got limitations with his arm, but there was plenty of elite franchise Hall of Fame quarterbacks that do. To me, that's not going to stop him. Kyle's stopping him. So I believe that Brock has the potential to be an elite franchise quarterback. I do not believe he will ever reach it. And it pains me to say that. It genuinely pains me to say that. Because I really honestly believe it. I really honestly believe that Brock has it in him to be that guy. Because I believe he's self-aware enough to make the corrections that need to be made. But here's the thing. And I've seen this pattern with Kyle for many years, starting prior to him ever becoming a 49er. Kyle kills the confidence of his quarterbacks. And I believe that he's slowly starting to do that to Brock. And it's sad. And so I don't believe we're ever going to see the best of Brock. Because the leash is too short. He does not have the freedom to be a franchise quarterback. And you know, if Kyle did loosen the leash or take it off, there would be bumps in the road. But at least he'd learn from them. At least he'd grow from them. But how can you learn and grow if you don't have the freedom to make the mistakes to learn and grow from? If you're always having to play within the constraints of a bubble, how do you know how to expand beyond it? And so every way that I try to look at this, every way that I try to make it make sense to keep Kyle for another year leads me right back to he needs to go. The problem for Brock is you bring in another coach and they're going to want their guy. Because Brock has that, wow, man, what did I hear the other day? I think Jesse called it a Jimmy tax. And that sucks, man. That's not fair. But it's true. So I believe that, here, first of all, I believe that Jimmy Garoppolo was probably a better quarterback or had the potential to be a quarterback than he ended up being because Kyle also killed his confidence. Now, I don't think Jimmy was ever going to be as good as Brock could be. But I definitely think he was better than he ended up being. And I think you can attribute a lot of what Jimmy ended up being to Kyle. Good and bad, more bad. Because I really believe that Jimmy was probably better when he first got here than when he left here. And you can't blame that on anybody but Kyle. So, you know, as much as Brock has the Jimmy tax, I, believe he should also have the Kyle tax, and not the way most people would spin that, like holding him back, or it's boosting him up. I mean, to me, it's holding him back. And it would be nice if another coach, if Jed York would hire another coach and be like, listen, we gave Kyle a 6-year contract, so we'll give you a 6-year contract, but we're going to add a year to it and give you 1 year to see what Brock has, then great. Get Brock. Yes, let's roll with that. Let's see what he's got under another coach. Under a coach that's actually going to try to develop him. That's actually going to allow him to be a franchise guy. For better or worse. Take the cap hit in 1 year. I know it would be an astronomical cap hit to sign Brock to a 1-year contract. Because you can't spread it out and they have to take it all that 1 year. Well, apparently they got $50 million to roll over. So give Brock a 1-year, $40 million contract. Fully guaranteed. Let's see what you got. Under another coach that's going to take the leash off. Let's see what you got. That would be ideal. That would be great. It's not going to happen. but that would be great. So the way I see it going is if Kyle, by some miracle, gets let go after this season, I don't see too many avenues where Brock sticks around. And to me, as much as I love Brock Purdy and I want him to succeed as a quarterback, keeping Kyle just so we can keep him is not worth it because the two of them together are not going to win a Super Bowl, and that's the goal. Above my genuine like for any particular player is my desire for that Super Bowl win. And so I don't believe that there's any chance Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy win a Super Bowl together on the San Francisco 49ers. So, who are some potential replacements for Kyle? Now, I was leaning towards Ben Johnson, and I think I still am, really, for the most part. But when you really start to think about it, and I thought about the similarities between Kyle and Ben, and the sentiment when Kyle was being hired, and now Ben getting his opportunity, and I look and I see Ben Johnson, and I look and see the kind of the attitude that he's had towards this coaching hiring cycle, and I see that he's saying I don't want to go here and I don't want to go there, and to me it's just like, oh man, is this another entitled dude that just thinks that he's above it? I don't know. I would love the opportunity to talk to somebody that's an avid Detroit Lions fan, to be able to ask him, what kind of leadership skills does Ben Johnson have? What kind of personality does he have? How is he with the media? How is he with his players? Now, it's hard to say because he's an offensive coordinator, so he's got to be very involved with his players. That doesn't mean that it's going to translate over to when he's a head coach, but I don't know. I would love to know these things, or at least have an idea of these things before we made a definitive decision, even in regards to Ben Johnson. Ultimately, what I would like to see in a head coach is just a head coach. Somebody who's going to be a leader of men. Somebody who is going to take the time to actually coach up his players. Someone like a Dan Campbell. Someone like a D'Amico Ryans. Someone like a Robert Saleh. I think that a Mike Tomlin, those are coaches. We need a guy that's going to come in and actually stand before his team and get the respect of them. Not the friendship. Not respect because of friendship. Respect because of reverence. Respect because of the man that he is. And so whoever that coach is, those are the type of qualities I believe he needs to have. And then he also needs to have a plan for the offense and the defense, obviously. Definitely needs to have a plan for the quarterback. But it's got to be pretty much the exact opposite personality of Kyle Shanahan. That's who the next head coach of the 49ers, in my opinion, should be. Okay, so now, this is the surprising way that I think this is all going to come to an end. I think that, let me first off say this. I honestly believe Kyle's burnt out. I think it's written all over him in his demeanor, in his appearance. He just looks like he's worn. And excuse me, I also believe, and I don't have any direct knowledge or evidence of this, but just based on what I'm seeing, I believe that he's lost the team. And I think he knows it. I think that he's lost the trust of his players. Now, he's got his buddies, Kyle, Check, Debo, Trent. He's got his buddies. But I think by and large, I think that his message is worn out. I think that his overall approach and his failures, his shortcomings, has lost the trust of the team. You tell me, no matter how much you want to like your boss or anybody that you choose to follow for that matter, if you keep reaching or get right on the doorstep of your ultimate goal, whatever it is you're striving for, you get there and you fall short for the same easily fixable, stupid freaking reason time and time and time and time again. How is it possible for you not to lose trust in that leader? How is it possible for your belief not to waver? And I'm talking about the guys who have been through it. The Fred Warner, the George Kittles, the Nick Bosas. How, and even Brock, because Brock is very aware. He knows what happened prior to him being here. How do you as a player, as somebody who's putting your heart, sweat, blood, and tears on the line, your body on the line, week after week after week, year after year after year, doing everything that your coach does, having unwavering loyalty and support to that person, and you get right below that mountaintop, and then that person that you're following does the same stupid shit every time and knocks you all the way back down the mountain. You're telling me that continues to happen and those players in that organization have not had their support waver? No. Come on. So I believe what we are seeing out of a lot of these players is that they're not bought in. The effort, the discipline, it's not there. The desire to get theirs instead of the team first. McCaffrey, Trent Williams, Brandon Ayuk. The mentality shifted from team to I need mine. That happens when you come to the realization this guy's not going to get us where we're going, where we want to go. This guy's not going anywhere, so I might as well get what I have coming to me. I really, truly believe that the signs started to appear right after the Super Bowl that the team had lost faith, trust, and belief in Shanahan and his message. It's felt off since the day after the Super Bowl. It's felt off, and it's never recovered. And I don't think it's going to. And so I believe Kyle's lost this team, at least partly, and I believe he knows it. And I believe that Kyle's the type of guy that is not willing to fall on his face. He is not willing to tarnish his reputation. I believe Kyle's the type of dude that's going to be like, oh shit. My name, my legacy, the regard in which I am held throughout this league is tumbling. And it's already started. And he can see it and he can feel it. Kyle's made it very clear that he listens to content creators. He reads the articles. He sees what's on Twitter. He knows what's out there. He's seen his support plummet. And so I believe what is going to happen is Kyle is going to approach John or Jed and say, how about you let me out of my contract? We agree to mutually part ways. Now, I believe Jed, being who he is going to be like, no. And not because he's standing up to Kyle, but because he's afraid to lose Kyle. I believe he's going to tell him that he's not willing to let him go. And I think that they are going to agree to allow Jed to trade him. With Kyle being able to pick the team. And I think that there is a number of teams out there that would be interested. But I think there's only less than a handful of teams that Kyle would be interested in, considering the fact that that team would more than likely have to give up at least one first-round pick to pull it off. So that team is going to have to be pretty much set at quarterback if they're giving up a first-round pick and don't have the ability to draft one. They're pretty much going to have to be set on both sides of the offensive line, specifically the defensive line. Just because we see Kyle's outlook on the offensive line, they probably don't have to be secure there. But I believe that there's a couple of teams that fit the bill. Now, I think that a team like the Cowboys would absolutely love to trade for Kyle Shanahan. Never going to happen. For one, Jed York's never going to trade Kyle Shanahan to the Dallas Cowboys. They would have to give up 4 first-round picks for Kyle Shanahan. It's not going to happen. 2, Kyle could never work under Jerry Jones. That marriage would fail instantly. So that team is not going to happen. The Saints, it's not happening. They're in cap hell. They don't have a quarterback. And if they trade first-round picks, would not have the means to get one. So that team's out. The Giants, same thing. No quarterback. Pretty talented most every other place. But if they're trading out first-round picks to get Kyle, they don't have the ability to draft one. And now Daniel Jones got released. So it's not like Kyle could even fix that. So then you look at a team like the Bengals. You know, they may or may not move on from Zach Taylor, considering how it looks like this season is going. Now, they do have an amazing quarterback, and they do have talent on both sides of the ball. And I think that team would be an ideal fit for Kyle. It's in the AFC, so, you know, Jed doesn't have to worry about facing him in the NFC playoffs prior to the Super Bowl. But here's the thing. The Browns are cheap. Zach Taylor still has 2 years on his contract. And the Bengals just don't operate that way. So it's not going to happen. Zach Taylor probably gets 5 more years before they even consider firing him. I don't see that one happening. The Jets, you know, they're pretty loaded, and Kyle probably could go in there and make some noise with that team. They're in the AFC, but their quarterback's Aaron Rodgers. And, man, I think Aaron's washed. And I would say probably so does Kyle. So that team doesn't make any sense. The Raiders are another team that I think would probably trade quite a bit. I don't think it matters that they just hired Antonio Pierce. And I don't think there's a player on that team that would be able to raise too much of a hell for firing him and hiring Kyle. But I think the Niners would probably do a little bit of what the Raiders did to the Niners in the whole Khalil Mack trade. And I think this would be the 49ers' way of sticking it right back to him. So I don't see that one happening. Now, the last two teams, I think, are the most likely teams. And I'll start with the one that I think is the least likely, and that's the Bears. Mostly the Bears because they're in the NFC. And the Bears, in my opinion, have, and it would depend on what Kyle thinks of Caleb Williams. Because they are pretty loaded on both sides of the ball. Their defense could use a little bit more. Okay, but they could fill in those positions later on in the draft and probably be fine, along with free agency. And I do think Kyle would do a fairly decent job of turning that team around and probably make them perennial playoff contenders. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I think all things being equal, the Niners wouldn't trade him to the Bears because they're in the NFC. And I think if there was no better option out there, they probably would do it. If that's what was agreed upon between Kyle and Jed to find a trade. But the team, I think, is the most likely destination for Kyle via a trade is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, they have a quarterback. They have receivers. They have a running back that fits the mold of what Kyle likes to do in Travis Etienne. They have a bruising running back in Tank Bigsby. They have defensive line talent. The team really fits the mold of Kyle Shanahan. And the owner of the Jaguars, I think, would be willing to pull the trigger on something like that. And the loss of a first-round pick or two to get Kyle would probably be a little bit more the Jaguars would be able to stomach that a little bit more than a lot of teams because they don't have a lot of really glaring needs. What they have a glaring need of is someone to get the best out of the talent that they have. And for all his faults, I do think compared to what they have and what they have had, Kyle can do that. I really, truly believe Kyle can do that. And I really do think that the roster construction really fits Kyle and his schemes and his mindset when it comes to how he wants to play football. So I would put the Jags as, and here's a big one, a big factor, softball media. I mean, softball fan. He's not going to face the vitriol that he gets from the Niner fan. And a lot of the media in San Francisco, yeah, they don't come hard at Kyle. They're not going to go hard at him in Jacksonville either. So I think that would be a nice, relaxing, just easygoing place for Kyle to go. And I really do think he could find some success there. I don't think he's going to win a Super Bowl, but I think he could find some success and he could make Jacksonville into a pretty good team. The talent is there. And so if I had to guess, that's my bold prediction of what's going to happen with Kyle. You know, I'm probably wrong because that's my luck. But that's my bold prediction on Kyle. So that's the show, guys. My first video delving into this content creation world in the San Francisco 49ers universe. And, you know, I'm looking forward to potentially meeting some fellow 49ers fans and even rival fans. That's what makes it fun. So, you know, go ahead and leave a comment, give me your critiques, you know, tell me what I could do better. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of pushback and hate on my Kyle takes, and that's okay. That's what we're here for, you know. I'm actually jumping on a plane tomorrow, flying to Green Bay with my son to watch the Niners and Packers. Really sucks that Purdy's not going to play and Bosa's not going to play, and we're probably going to get our teeth kicked in. But hey, going to go have a good time. Going to try to record some content and some shenanigans with some Packers fans out there and put it on the channel. But, you know, I look forward to doing this a couple times a week and see where it goes. Yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. Peace.